Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Suah from the Department of Social Welfare at Seoul National University. It is a great honor to present our study today. The title of our presentation is The Influence of Suicidal Ideation Trajectory on Learning Attitude and Career Adaptability among South Korean Adolescents. Adolescent suicide has been a serious and long-standing concern in South Korea. Between 2017 and 2022, the suicide rate among youth aged 9 to 24 increased by 22%. As of 2021, this rate was 2.1 times higher than the OECD average. According to national surveys, about 14% of Korean adolescents have experienced suicidal thoughts, almost twice as high as the rate among young adults. For several years, Korean adolescents have reported academic stress and career-related anxiety as the top two reasons for suicidal ideation. In South Korea, these pressures are intensified by a highly competitive education system and a strong cultural emphasis on academic success, which makes school performance closely tied to one's sense of self-worth and future stability. These findings show that psychological distress is deeply connected with two key developmental tasks in adolescence: learning and career preparation. Most previous studies have focused on the causes of suicidal ideation, such as depression, family conflict, or school stress, treating it mainly as an outcome variable. However, few studies have examined how suicidal ideation itself functions as a predictor and how it influences adolescents' development over time. In addition, most prior studies were cross-sectional, so they couldn't capture how suicidal thoughts change dynamically during adolescence. But in reality, adolescents don't experience suicidal ideation in a single fixed pattern. Some experience temporary increases, some recover, and others show persistent or late-rising patterns. This heterogeneity in trajectories has rarely been modeled, especially in relation to learning and career outcomes. So, this study had two main goals. First, to identify distinct longitudinal trajectories of suicidal ideation among Korean adolescents. And second, to examine how these trajectories predict academic engagement, academic helplessness, and career adaptability. Adolescence is widely recognized as a period of identity exploration and preparation for adult roles. During this stage, young people develop emotional and cognitive resources that shape how they approach learning and future careers. In particular, career construction theory emphasizes that adolescents build career adaptability through psychological resources such as control, curiosity, and confidence. These resources enable them to manage transitions, make decisions, and plan for the future. Building on this framework, our study focuses on how changes in suicidal ideation may weaken or restore these developmental resources and, in turn, influence learning attitudes and career adaptability. We use 6 waves of data from the Korean Children and Youth Panel Survey 2018. This survey followed adolescents from the first year of middle school to the third year of high school. Our final sample included 1,936 students who had complete data for all 6 years. Among them, 53% were male and 47% were female. Our key independent variable was the trajectory of suicidal ideation. It was measured each year with one question. I currently have thoughts of wanting to die. Responses were rated on a 4-point scale. Dependent variables measuring the final wave included academic engagement, enthusiasm and energy for learning, academic helplessness, feelings of loss of control or motivation in study, and career adaptability, the psychological ability to plan, explore, and make career decisions. We also control for gender, parental education, household income, perceived economic status, and residential area. The analysis proceeded in 2 stages. First, we used LCGA to identify distinct subgroups of adolescents with similar suicidal ideation trajectories. Second, we conducted regression analysis to examine how these trajectory groups differed in academic engagement, helplessness, and career adaptability. Our analysis revealed 4 distinct trajectories. First, the persistently low group, 45.7%, showed very low suicidal ideation across all years. Second, the moderate group, 38.6%, showed moderate levels with a gradual increase over time. Third, the moderate source group, 8.7%, started moderate but sharply increased in late high school. Finally, the elevated plummet group, 7%, showed high levels only in middle school, then a sharp decline. Nearly half of adolescents, about 47%, belong to groups with rising suicidal ideation, showing that suicidal thoughts are dynamic, not static. Let's look at the academic outcomes. For academic engagement, the persistently low group showed significantly higher engagement than all other groups. Even when suicidal thoughts decreased later, adolescents with a history of high ideation still show lower motivation and persistence in learning. This suggests that past suicidal ideation has a lasting negative effect on academic enthusiasm. For academic helplessness, the pattern was very clear. Moderate surge was the highest, followed by moderate rise, then elevated plummet, and finally the persistently low group. Both current and long-term exposure to suicidal radiation increased feelings of helplessness and loss of control in school. So even when suicidal thoughts decreased, students who had once experienced them still felt less capable of managing school challenges. The pattern of career adaptability was quite different and meaningful. Here, current suicidal ideation mattered more than past experiences. Adolescents whose current ideation was low, even if they had struggled before, showed adaptability levels similar to those who had never experienced suicidal thoughts. This means that career adaptability is recoverable. Once psychological stability is regained, youth can rebuild their confidence, their curiosity, and their sense of control about the future. This study examined how academic and career development, 2 core developmental tasks of adolescents, are shaped by long-term patterns of suicidal ideation. Let me summarize 4 key insights. First, nearly half of Korean adolescents show rising suicidal ideation over time. This confirms that suicidal ideation is dynamic, not fixed. Especially in late high school, many adolescents remain at elevated psychological risk. The moderate SARS group showed the most rapid increase and the poorest social well-being, including lower self-esteem, higher depression, and social withdrawal. So, both psychological and social contexts should be considered when identifying high-risk groups. Second, academic engagement was influenced not only by current suicidal ideation, but also by past experiences. Even those who had once struggled but later recovered still show lower motivation than the persistently low group. This means suicidal ideation leaves a cumulative and lasting impact on learning motivation and persistence. Early interventions that reveal resilience and learning motivation are therefore essential. Third, academic helplessness was also shaped by both current and past ideation. It was highest in the moderate SARS group, and even those whose ideation had decreased still reported higher helplessness than the persistently low group. Prolonged exposure to suicidal thoughts can weaken one's sense of control, fostering a belief that my effort doesn't change the outcome. So, intervention should aim to restore control, emotional regulation, and self-efficacy. Finally, career adaptability was influenced more by current ideation than by past experiences. Adolescents who were psychologically stable at present, even if they had struggled before, show similar adaptability to those who had never experienced suicidal thoughts. This aligns with career construction theory, which views adaptability as malleable and recoverable. Once psychological stability is restored, optimism and confidence toward the future can be rebuilt. Our findings have several implications. First, this study highlights suicidal ideation not only as an outcome variable, but also as a predictor of adolescent development. By focusing on how ideation itself shapes learning and career functioning, this research goes beyond the traditional risk factor perspective. Second, analyzing trajectories help us see how adolescent psychological states related to suicidal ideation evolve over time, and how these changes influence learning and career growth. Third, identifying multiple trajectories remind us that adolescents' internal experiences are not uniform. Recognizing this heterogeneity allows for tailored interventions customized for each trajectory rather than a one-size-fits-all model. There are a few limitations to note. First, our analysis focused only on middle and high school students, so patterns may differ in younger or older populations. Second, all measures were self-reported without behavioral data such as grades or college outcomes. Third, although we focused on the effects of suicidal ideation, bidirectional relationships are possible. For instance, low academic engagement could in turn increase suicidal ideation. Lastly, we did not examine the mechanisms behind the different trajectories. Future studies should identify risk and protective factors to explain why some adolescents recover while others continue to struggle. To conclude, this study identified four distinct trajectories of suicidal ideation and examined their links to academic and career outcomes. Academic engagement and helplessness were affected by both past and current ideation, while career adaptability was more closely tied to current levels. These findings show that suicidal ideation is not just a mental health issue, but a developmental factor that shapes how young people learn, adapt, and plan their futures. Therefore, early, tailored, and continuous interventions targeting suicidal ideation are essential to strengthen adolescents' academic motivation, emotional recovery, and career adaptability. Thank you so much for listening.